Okay, it's the following day. Got everything sitting where it needs to be. There's a few things that I still need to do. One of the things I was talking about yesterday was reversing these brackets here for the radiator. Well, I've done that. I've just spotted them in at the moment. One issue that I've come across is when the air conditioning condenser goes in here, it's obviously the radiator's come down because the shroud's come down, but the condenser's still got to sit where it originally was, because if I was to drop that, it's going to be too close to the ground and probably rip the bottom out of it. So I need to, I think from about here, I need to cut that piece of aluminium out there, and same on the other side, and that'll go in nicely. That'll sit nice and flush up against there, just above it. There won't be any issues with airflow. It's how they're normally set up on most factory built cars. It's going to have a nice big thermo fan hanging off the back of it, so I'll be okay. There's a couple of little things I discovered that maybe I could have got away with, and I didn't need to hack out as much sheet metal as I did. You can see here on the guard, probably what I needed to remove was about that much, not all of that came out of there, that wedge shaped piece. It's no biggie. I've left the roll on the lip, so when these two panels, well, this apron anyway has to be fixed. It has probably a new section has to be put in there. I'll cut that out, and what I'll do is I'll weld a plate in behind the sheet metal. I'll weld a plate at 90 degrees with a 90 degree bend on it, and then one off here to go that way, and then I can put a bolt through the two to tie them together, which would have been originally how they were anyway. So I'll add the strength back in to the front there, so that's not a big deal. It's a lot easier to add it to the back of the face of these two panels than it is trying to stitch weld it back along that edge there. So I'm glad that I left that roll on there. One of the other issues I had was trying to put that support brace back in. I did tack weld it, and I had to do a little bit of tapping and banging to try and get everything to sort of sit in properly, because the guards are sitting a little bit skew whiff at the moment. They're hitting on the cabin, and they really need to come up a little bit. As I was saying yesterday, there was a little bit of play in that guard. That guard needs to come up, and the reason it can't come up is because it's hitting the cabin, and the reason it's hitting the cabin is because of these guard support brackets. The holes are pretty much in the right spot, and as I was saying yesterday, these holes were the top holes but have now become the bottom holes. But obviously doing that has pushed the guard back a little bit, so what I've got to do is elongate this hole, which will give me more movement in that front bolt. When the guard pops up at the back, I'll level it up, get it where I need it, just temporarily. I hate that word, it's so hard to say. I'll clamp that up. I might even put a spot weld in there just to hold it rigid, and then what I'll do is I'll just drill two fresh holes. I won't try and find I might try and find this front one, in the chassis, because that's already got a threaded nut inserted. But this one on this side, it's going to be a little bit hard, and this bracket would actually need to be a little bit wider. I think, yeah, I've got my finger on the center of that nut now, and my finger's on the outside of the bracket. So yeah, I'll need to drill something new in there, but I can probably use this one. I think if I can feel it, because I've pulled up there, I can feel a little bulge there. Yeah, about there I think the nut is. So I can drill that out. I can utilize these two front ones, but I'll need to drill 2 fresh holes here, and yeah, that'll pull the whole thing forward, and it'll pop the guard up at the back, which will give me the correct height, and then I'll be able to cut down these inner fender panels, take the 65mm off there. But I'm actually thinking about doing something else. I'm thinking about cutting that on a wedge shaped angle, and just putting one 90-degree fold in it, and then drilling a couple of holes in here and bolting that down onto the chassis for more rigidity. I think that might be a good way to do it. These guards really didn't have a lot of mounting points. Sure, you had your holes in the guard here, which bolted to the running board, but the running board was supporting basically all of this. Those side panels weren't bolted down; they just had a bracket on them that straddled the chassis, and that was it. So I'm thinking about making it more of a permanent fixture. You can see the angle there, so I've got to work that out, and yeah, I'll bend them at right angles, and that'll give me a nice clean edge right along there. It should look alright. Decided to get my thermo fan out just to trial fit it, make sure that before I fully weld those radiator brackets in, mounting brackets, that I've got enough room, enough clearance to mount this, because to be honest, I've never really tried it. I just sort of looked at it by eye and thought, yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah, this is the hard bit. I'm going to try and balance this and then give you a look at what I've got down here. I've got plenty of room there. My idea was to make not just a mount from each point on here, that I was going to get a sheet of aluminium plate and make a proper what would you call it, like a shroud, and then cut a big hole out in the center and then mount this to the actual shroud. Very common type of thing. So yeah, even if I had the shroud on and this was bolted to the shroud, I've still got enough clearance there. Probably got about an inch in the old term, or 25mm, between the water pump shaft and the body of the thermo fan. So yeah, plenty of room there. Not going to have any issues. Okay, I'm getting ready for my first cut on this radiator. Let's see how we go. Okay, the first cut's done. Okay, I've made the cuts on both sides. I made sure that I didn't cut into the bead weld there on these brackets. Not that these are needed for anything, but as I was saying, if I end up making like a cover, a shroud for the thermofan to mount to, most likely these brackets will be the fastening points for that shroud. So just to be on the safe side, I didn't want to go any deeper than that, and I think that that will give me enough clearance to get that air conditioning condenser in there now. Okay, it all worked out pretty good. I actually thought I'd made a mistake in cutting it. I measured my cuts wrong, but I didn't. As you can see, this side's nice gap there, because these move independent of each other, or are mounted independently of each other. This is mounted to those brackets, but the condenser is actually mounted to the radiator shroud, and one fixed point here on the chassis. On this side, I've got a huge gap, and I'm thinking, hang on a second, I cut it wrong. But then I realised that there's actually a double notching here in the front of this lip to pass hoses and stuff through. So this cut here is not a mistake, it's a factory cut. There's just nothing I can do about it. If I wanted to really get fussy, you know, I could do the same on this side as well to match them up. But you know, the less I got to cut out of it, the better. I'm just going to leave that like that. When the grill goes in, you don't actually see these sides unless you're standing on an angle like that. Face on, you don't see it. I think the grill's back here somewhere, so it's in about an inch and a bit on each side. So yeah, that's neat. It works. Still got a couple of edges on there. I didn't actually use the grinder to clean up the edges. I just used a hand file. Unless you're using a proper aluminium blade in your grinder for cutting this sort of stuff, any other type of blade tends to melt aluminium. It's just running it at too hot a temperature. I tend to use these types of blades. They're only 1mm thick, but you know, they're for steel and stainless. They'll work okay with aluminium, but it's just really hard to cut. You wouldn't think so, being a soft material, but it is. And it just sort of melts. So there's my pieces, my leftover bits. You can see there's an angle there from one of those outlets that was on this side. That's the same profile at that when it went. I think that mounted to the top there like that. That would have come out there like that somehow. So that was, yeah, that was an opening for a hose to pass through. So yeah, it's not a mistake. Quite happy with that. I've got enough clearance down here that nothing's rubbing. Got enough clearance when this is bolted up to the shroud. There'll be enough clearance there that the radiator's not rubbing on the condenser and boring holes through it. So yeah, it's all back together now. Quite happy. My pipe has enough clearance there, enough ground clearance, it won't get in the way. All good. I've just put the shroud back on just to give you a bit of a look at how everything sits. It sits pretty good, you know, it's nice and neat. You know, if there was somewhere else to hide the condenser, I would, but there isn't. So, you know, that's alright. If I give that that condenser a very light degrees and steam clean under low pressure, that'll come up as shiny as the radiator itself. It's just really dirty, you know. It's 15 years old. I probably could have raised radiator slightly on those brackets, but I figured why rebend the brackets, you know, they'll work fine. One issue that I had on my old girl here, when I mounted the radiator, was that where the filler neck comes out behind the shroud, you can just get a standard radiator cap on, and I never really had an issue with that. But then I went and bought a nice chrome plated radiator cap for it, just to dress the motor up a little bit, and then found that I have troubles getting it on and getting it off because it's twice as thick because of the chrome cap. So at least with this, I'm not going to have any issues whatsoever with getting a radiator cap on and off. It's just, yeah, it'll look alright. We'll set the grill insert back in, and that's what you'll see. But I can also conceal the radiator and the condenser a little bit more by putting on the back of this a screen, which will also help, you know, keep insects and stuff out of the radiator and the condenser. If I use say some black flywire screening, that'll really take away from what you see behind that grill. And by the time all the stainless steel trims go on this, because we've got them that run horizontal, we've got them that run vertically, and we've got them that run around the actual grill shroud, it's going to take your eye off it a lot. It's not going to stick out too bad. I'm hoping this will give you an idea of how much it's actually dropped, how much that 65mm has made. I've put this bar in here, which was one of the old hinge pins off the hood, and you can see the angle. I hope the camera does it justice though, as I said. If I come around to the side, you can see the massive slope on that now. That bonnet's supposed to sit, that hood's supposed to sit almost flat. So that will give you an idea, if it turns out on this footage, of how much I've dropped that. It's huge. It's quite exciting actually. This truck's gone through 3 different height stages. The height it was before the engine went in, the height that it sat at once the engine was in, and now the height that it's sitting at now that I've started to section and channel this this body and body panels. So it may even go a 4th step. We'll see. Once everything's in and bolted up to the truck properly, there's going to be a lot of extra weight there too. You know, I've still got the torque converter to go in. That's, you know, they're not light. By the time I bolt up thermo fans and I put all the rest of the air conditioning components in, and the LPG system, and then all the interior goes in, the 2 bucket seats, the console, radios, instrument cluster, you know, it's going to add a couple of 100 kilos. So the front end may even drop a little bit more without me having to alter the suspension at all. It may just go, drop down under its own weight. And we've got the floor pan to go in as well, so that's another thing. All the doors, they're going to be steeled out. They will I don't know if you can see it in this light. They're all wooden frame. They will be stilled out. They'll be a lot lighter, but then I've got the glass and the electric window mechanisms to go in, and you've got door handles and windscreen. So yeah, it'll add a lot of weight. I don't want to go any lower at the moment. It'd be nice to see this thing sitting in the weeds, but if I go too low by chopping springs, it may mean I've got to go out and buy another set of springs. And I was lucky that when I picked this front end up, it had a good set of sports heavy duty springs in it. So they're not a set that's just been cut down. They are a proper lowered set, and they are a heavy duty set. So I'll leave those for now. I'll leave it at that ride height. As I said, it's got to be practical, but it's got to look good too. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I can live with that at the moment. I just want to get back to something I spoke about yesterday. Steering column. You can see there, hopefully there's enough light. You know, I can afford to take that up 65mm, and that'll still actually be sitting on a flat section of the firewall. Whoops, camera is a bit high. Sorry, there we go. You know, that's sitting on that that angled section of the floor pan, or the support for the floor pan. But I've still got quite a bit of room left before the firewall starts to go vertical. So yeah, as the cabin comes down, that column can stay in exactly the same place, and the cabin will just come down over the column, rather than the column coming down to meet the cabin.